Ryan, we good?
Nice, good.
Okay.
They're really good.
Yeah.
Call the meeting to order. Good afternoon, everybody. It's always good to see everybody. Welcome to the March 21st meeting of the Temple Terrace Community Redevelopment Agency meeting. Are the minutes of the February 21st meeting acceptable? If so, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion or amendments to the minutes? If not, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No nays. Minutes are approved. And we have a presentation by Kimley Horn of the Temple Terrace Pedestrian Master Plan. I don't know, Business Relations Manager Greg Polly, are you going to introduce the item? Good.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Welcome, sir.
Mr. Chairman, agency board members, good evening, everyone. Greg Pauley, Business Relations Manager for the city. Just a real quick background on this project. The project was initiated last year following a request from City Council. It was funded through a CRA budget during our previous budget cycle. The consultant team was asked to prepare a pedestrian master plan focusing on the southeast quadrant of the CRA with two key factors in mind. We wanted to develop a plan to create a more pedestrian-friendly area to allow connectivity from the north end of that quadrant all the way down to the river. And we also asked our consultants to focus on the pond, the outfall pond, right there at Springdale and Chicago, to propose some developments to create a park-like community and other amenities that people could enjoy as they recreate in the area. We have two representatives here this evening from Kimley Horn. Our project manager, Ms. Corrine Beam, I'm sorry. Sorry. I do know her name. I just pronounced it wrong. She's been working on this project and is prepared to give you an update status report tonight. And with her is her partner with Kimley Horn, and that is Mr. Jared Snyder. So without further delay, I would like to invite Corinne and Jared to begin the presentation.
Good evening and welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Afternoon, I guess it's not evening yet.
Yes. Okay. So as Greg said, I'm here to give a status update on the Temple Terrace Pedestrian Master Plan, provide an update on some tasks we've completed, where we're currently at, and then timeline for wrapping up the project. So with that, we'll jump right in. Just as a brief overview, as Greg mentioned, the study area is really the southeast quadrant of the redevelopment area. As you can see here in the map, generally bounded by Bullard Parkway to the north, the Hillsborough River to the south, 56th Street to the west, and then Springdale Sunnyside Road to the east. Not to reiterate too much of what Greg already introduced, but the main goal of the project is to develop pedestrian concepts to improve pedestrian flow and connectivity, enhance walkability throughout the site, as well as add some improvements and amenities to the Springdale Pond outflow area. Some project updates. So we officially kicked off the project last November with city staff, and since then we've had a couple coordination meetings to develop the concepts and kind of clean them up and work through them to get to the concepts that you'll see in a few slides here. And we've also met with a couple stakeholders in the southeast quadrant to get their initial feedback on our draft concepts before we move forward with finalizing them. The draft concepts, we really started by going out to the site and evaluating some opportunities and constraints that are currently out there today in order to understand existing conditions. And then we took that and started developing the pedestrian concepts you'll see soon, along with those placemaking concepts around the pond. And then, based on our initial concepts, we've also developed some planning level budget estimates for the plan. Before we dive into the specifics of the concepts, for the purposes of the master plan, we divided the study area into three sub-areas. As you'll see on the map there, the north sub-area, which is generally the area between Bullard Parkway and C Street. If you're not too familiar, C Street is the access into the shopping center plaza just south of the 8901 parcel. Then the central sub-area, which is essentially the entire Winn-Dixie parcel in the middle of the site. And then we have the south sub-area, which is the portion of the site from Chicago south down to the river. So getting into the concepts, starting with the north sub-area, this slide here just shows some example inspirational images, if you will, of what we're intending to accomplish with the improvements in that portion of the site. And those improvements include intersection improvements, the enhancement of some parallel parking to use it for some flex space, which I'll get into in the next slide, widened sidewalks, a gateway space, and landscape planters. And for the purposes of sharing these in presentation mode, the concept is split into two, so there'll be 2 slides for the north sub area. The main improvement in this area, knowing that the site has been recently developed with the construction of the Waverly Apartments as well as the fountain shops, is really reconfiguring Bertha Palmer Boulevard. So currently there's parallel parking on the east side and west side of that roadway, and the recommended concept is to convert the parallel parking on the east side to a widened sidewalk to, again, enhance pedestrian flow throughout that portion of the site and connectivity, and then taking the parallel parking on the west side, keeping it as parallel parking, but also being able to use it for flex space, say in the event of a market or food truck rally, having a dedicated space for those activities. In addition to that recommended improvement there, we have also recommended adding sharrows or paved lane markings to the roadway to indicate to vehicles traveling along Bertha Palmer that bicyclists are also present and using the roadway, really providing that multimodal element to that portion of the site. And then some other smaller improvements include landscape planters along the sidewalk that's on 56th Street to really kind of tie in that edge of the site into the main areas there. And then this is the southern half of the northern sub area. As you can see, continuing that widened sidewalk down to C Street. Again, the flex space also continuing down to C Street, in addition to some sidewalk enhancements and a gateway space feature. Getting into the central sub area, so again, some inspirational images of what we're intending to accomplish in this area, and really again, the focus here is on how to create more space for pedestrians, particularly in front of the shopping center. And our recommended improvements that we're proposing in the concepts include a widened pedestrian area. In order to accommodate that, which you'll see in a couple slides, include reconfiguring the parking and drive aisles in front of the Winn-Dixie and the shopping center, as well as the addition of some pocket park amenities such as seating and dining. It's important to note for this central sub area that we worked with staff, we initially developed 3 concepts, and in working with staff, we chose the third option, option C, which you'll see soon here as the concept to proceed forward with, or as the preferred option, if you will. Before we dive into option C and the preferred improvements, just wanted to give you an overview of the other 2 options that we did put together and discuss with staff and work through before we got to where we are today. So option A on the left-hand side of the screen, really that option, it doesn't change the pedestrian area in front of Winn-Dixie all too much. It would be what's existing today, but maybe replacing some of the existing concrete with pavers, so that same design feel that's in the north and that will be in the south, but those improvements is continued all the way through. And again, including those pocket park elements such as benches and dining in the northern corner and the southern corner of the shopping center, as you can see in the circles there. Option B differs from option A in that we took that pedestrian walkway, instead of keeping it in front of the Winn-Dixie shopping center, moving it over to the west side of the drive aisle with widened sidewalk, pavered area for pedestrians. And this option we really felt introduced a lot of opportunities for conflicts between pedestrians and vehicles traveling in and out, accessing the Winn-Dixie, so we decided to not move forward with that one. And then option C. So this is our preferred option, kind of has the most amount of improvements, if you will, and mainly the difference is taking that space in front of the Winn-Dixie and the shopping center and widening it for pedestrian use and access. In order to accommodate that, that would require reconfiguring the drive aisle in front of the shopping center, as well as reconfiguring some internal parking area spaces there. But again, that still allows for space for the outdoor seating and dining, as well as some park features to the northern portion. And then lastly, getting into the south sub area. So again, this is where you'll see a lot of amenities for around the Springdale pond and outfall area to really enhance it, make it a community amenity and an area for people to recreate either passively or actively. And those improvements include some intersection improvements to enhance crossings between different portions of the site, as well as park amenities featuring a multi-use trail, fitness area, picnic area, and gazebo area. And you'll see on this slide here the locations of those recommended improvements. So starting at the north end of this area of the site on Chicago Ave, the recommendation for a raised intersection on Chicago Ave is twofold. It's one, to enhance pedestrians crossing from central to the southern portion of the site, but also as a traffic calming element to slow down vehicles, make them aware of pedestrians as they're traversing along Chicago Avenue, understanding that it is very highly trafficked in that area of the site. Moving further along around the pond, you'll see the gazebo area where we're showing it that's intended to be kind of an entrance into the area, into the space, if you will, as well as the inclusion of picnic area, dining area in proximity to the Enigma redevelopment, understanding that that's a multi-use redevelopment and they'll have some dining, retail space, so the ability for people using that area to also use the park and vice versa. The addition of the multi-use trail, around the outfall pond, as well as the addition of a fitness area in the southeast corner there, and then connecting to the final southernmost portion of the site. That's where those intersection improvements come in on South River Hills Drive. So enhancing the raised crosswalk that's already there to, again, create safer crossing opportunities for pedestrians and bicyclists who are traveling between the two areas of the site, as well as an intersection mural or other intersection improvements to the intersection just east there. Really not too much change within Riverside Park itself, but building on the existing sidewalk network that's in there, as you'll see, to really activate that river space, whether it be a continued trail or potential boardwalk along the water, and taking that trail system through the park over to River Hills Drive. I believe there's a sidewalk that people can then connect down to River Hills Park. So with that, we took our initial draft concepts that you've seen there, and we started to get an idea of what this will cost to implement. Understanding that the concepts are still at a planning level, and they would still need to go through design and engineering. But total of everything for all improvements across the site is estimated to be $3,800,000. And then lastly, to wrap up the presentation, and then we'll open it up for questions, is just some highlights on the project timeframe. So wrapping up the project this spring. In order to do that, we'll finalize our concepts based on any feedback we receive here today or from some additional stakeholder outreach. We'll also, in addition to the renderings that you saw on the slides, we'll develop some street view perspective renderings. An example is there on the screen in order to illustrate how the site will feel with the improvements to a pedestrian or someone walking at the street level. We'll finalize the master plan document, and then we'll present that document publicly in a to-be-determined format, but it will be shared. So yeah, with that, thank you for your time. That's all I have on the presentation, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you. So I'm sure we do have some questions, but just to clarify my understanding of the expectations of what is to occur tonight, I know we have a goal-setting meeting coming up where we're going to talk about funding and budget priorities and available funds and revenue streams and that kind of thing. Tonight, if I understand correctly, it's just primarily for us to get this information, kind of ask clarifying questions or about the design or the potential design, but not so much to discuss approval of next steps. Is that kind of where we are with this?
Yes, Mayor, that's the way we've understood it as well. Correct. Just we wanted to make sure we get you the information, get you the estimates, particularly because you'd indicated you wanted to have that broader discussion next week.
Okay. So with that in mind, there's probably some clarifying questions for the slides and what's where. So council questions.
Yeah.
All right, Councilmember Fernandez.
So I don't know if this is a question for the planners or city staff, but some of the parcels they're not owned by the city anymore. What would that entail? Who would actually be paying for the improvements, and would they even want the improvements? And that question actually goes through the whole process of parking. If we reconfigure and eliminate some spaces, does the reconfiguration actually still provide enough parking to accommodate the needs of the businesses that are there and the potential? So those are my questions.
Okay.
Did you want to share your conversations with some of the stakeholders that you've had?
Yeah, so as far as parking, we did meet with East Coast Acquisitions, the owner of the Winn-Dixie Shopping Center, Enigma Events, and then also the Richmond Group. They're in charge of the Waverly Terrace Apartments, and parking is definitely one of their concerns as well, particularly the shopping center, knowing that parking and business access is part of their lease agreements. We haven't seen the specifics of that, but understanding their concerns, even though some parking may be taken, part of that reconfiguration includes adding some spaces back. And we can get into the details with that as we finalize the concepts, but I think that's a concern kind of all around, is how will parking be accommodated with them, with the concepts.
So then, as to who would do the current owners actually want to see this kind of improvement, and then who would actually be paying for it on the property segments?
As far as, I guess, if the,
Oh, I'm sorry. I think the city manager has some input on this too, but I'm not sure who wants to go first.
So I think what is being said is very accurate. I think the property owners obviously are going to be more conservative in their approach. This is their investment, and so I think they have a concern about the loss of parking, which we expected. There is a significant loss of parking projected for the Winn-Dixie Plaza. That's without a doubt if this project were implemented. I think in terms of moving forward, who would pay, I would imagine the city would be heavily involved in that if that's the direction we got from the CRA board and the council. As to move forward on making these improvements, it'd have to be, I would imagine, some sort of a negotiation with the property owner, because they're going to lose some parking, but we're going to add this amenity to their site. We'd have to also determine, working with our city attorney, the legal instrument to protect the city's investment, whether that's some sort of an easement or another encumbrance on the property. And again, that would be something that we'd have to have broader discussions with the property owner on, because that would be something that would be going into perpetuity on the piece of land also. So we're at the very early stages. I think most importantly to us is to just make sure that the CRA board understands where we are and gets a comfort level for where we are, and then we can continue to have those conversations going forward.
Just to make sure I understood fully the answer to the question here, so the private property issue only would pertain to the Winn-Dixie, the central sub area. The north sub area, we have sufficient city-owned property to do the project?
right, so for the northern sub-area, particularly in Bertha Palmer Boulevard, the improvements are all within the right-of-way.
And the same thing would be true of the southern sub area?
Right.
It's just the Winn-Dixie.
Yep.
Very good. Oh,
Yeah,
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that. So if we were to go with concept C, which moves the entrance to the Winn-Dixie parking off of Street C into there, is moving it to the west, correct? Yes. That would be all our dime, right? Or would that be?
Again,
I mean, we can't force somebody to do that.
no, you are correct. Kind of following up on what the city manager brought up a moment ago. We're very early in this process, and it's not part of the scope of this particular project to drill down on those negotiations. But I think the two of you are absolutely correct. There would be an ongoing negotiation that would have to play out with regards to protecting the city's interest, protecting the property owner's interest, and still accomplishing something that is palatable for the CRA board as well as the city council.
Okay, and thank you. And I know it's way early to know whether that moving that entrance would be part of the 3.8 million or not. That's just, I guess, a little early to know that.
I think the figures, and I don't want to speak for Corinne, but I think the figures are high altitude numbers that do or do encompass those adjustments.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Can you put that graphic back up? Because I'm not real clear when we're talking about moving.
Oh, okay.
entrance. I'd like to.
I hope I got it right.
Yeah, I'd like to take a look at that.
Okay, at the very top,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh,
Relocated access.
Yes.
Right, so the access to, I don't think we have it in the, so at the very northern on C Street, that drive aisle access, correct, it's currently more west, and we're just proposing shifting it east to align with the drive aisles. If you are familiar with the northern portion, there's already.
I understand. Right now, from Bertha Palmer Drive, you can drive all the way down.
Right, you
to
would still be
Chicago
able.
straight. Well, there's some curves, but you don't have to make a hard right or hard left.
Right, and
This
that,
would traffic calm that too,
right, it would
and
still,
move the traffic away so the pedestrians can be near the building.
I got you.
right,
Yeah.
yep. So it would still, you'd still be able to go north to south on Bertha Palmer, but it would be reconfigured slightly to the west.
Yeah, thank you.
I think, Corinne, what we were projecting 15, 20 spaces loss, right, is kind of what we
With the
saw. Yeah.
reconfiguration, yep.
I see. Thank you.
Yes.
Councilmembers?
Thank you. This is more for Mr. Pauly. How much interaction has this project, or has city staff had on this project thus far in the discussions?
A lot.
A lot?
Yes, a lot. We've had multiple meetings, telephone calls.
Okay.
The city manager and myself have personally met with the most impacted stakeholder in the area to discuss the project. Corinne and her team have then followed up and met with them. I invited Corinne to meet with them outside of city staff because I wanted her team to hear what they truly felt, what the stakeholders truly felt about the project. And we were thinking that we might adjust our approach based on that. And as Corinne has shared with you, the concern obviously is parking space in that central sub area. And
Well, to my point, you verify these parking space losses and how they'll, like, nobody know how they'll impact businesses, but the private property, we validated that these are the number of parking spaces that they will lose based upon our current calculations.
we have not personally done that, but I have asked the Kimley Horn team to actually drill down on that. She can probably
Our
give.
rules.
Yes, she can probably give you better details on what spaces would be lost from what areas and what other areas may provide opportunity to add some spaces.
All right, okay, thank you.
Councilmember Abel?
My questions have already been addressed.
Could you put the sub-area A north, the
Oh, yes.
north one back up, please?
Sure.
So I can see where the circle is, where the circle's labeled parallel parking flex space. I can see where that is. I can envision that. Where is the pedestrian path? Across the street from that, is it indicated on this map?
So it's not circled, but correct, directly across Bertha Palmer, that sidewalk you'll see, that is currently parallel parking, so we're showing it, it's that gray sidewalk area.
So it's where the palm trees on the graph are depicted, that's the walkway, where the
Yep.
walkway would be?
Yep. There it is.
Okay. And so, while not probably optimal, it is feasible to do the north portion of the project and the south portion of the project and phase in the middle portion, which is obviously the most problematic portion.
Right, and as part
Because
of,
those are both city-owned properties.
correct.
Those are easy. No, they're
Well,
expensive, but they're
yeah.
easy. The middle one is the sticky one, correct?
Correct. And I think that's the goal and the intention of this master plan is to have a vision for this area as it continues to redevelop and change, and knowing that the short term, correct, you can accomplish some of those quick wins in the north and southern areas, and then that central area may just take longer depending on what happens with that site over time.
I mean, we're speculating at this point, but I mean, there could be some added motivation if we've built out the north, both sides of this business, and it looks beautiful, and now the one that doesn't is right there. There may be some more incentive once you build the other two sides
Potentially,
to
yeah.
get more meaningful negotiations with the owners of the middle piece. Okay. Other questions? And obviously, during our goal-setting meeting, we're going to have some robust discussions about, is there, where do we want to go with this, and how much money is there, and that kind of stuff, so. Very good. And no more questions, I'll let Corinne's.
Presentation, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. We've been eagerly awaiting this, so thank you very much to your
It's definitely an
team.
exciting project.
I think I've nagged you a few times, so thank you for, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Pauly, anything else for the CRA board?
No, sir. If you have any questions of me, I'm certainly available, but that's all we have to present to you tonight.
Well, I'm sure we're going to have some robust discussion at our goal setting. So,
Certainly.
In fact, we may decide to work through some of the other things first and save this for last or something, because I know there's a lot to talk about here.
Absolutely. Very good, sir. Thank you very much.
Anything else before the CRA board? Okay, if not, we'll be adjourned. We have a 4-minute intermission.